Let's see. Is this thing on? Can you hear me? Okay. Great. So first off, give it up for Jeremy. That is my favorite kind of presentation, right, where you get like concrete, actionable tips that you can take away and start using right now, and they were data-driven. I thought that was really awesome. So let's give it up for Jeremy one more time. And disappointingly for me, he stole some of my content, so I'm going to be talking about some of the same things, but coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. We're going to be talking about sales development in the digital transformation era, and that's kind of an overused word, but I've heard it defined as radical transformation of technology, people, and process. And I think those three pillars are the things to really think about and focus on, and I think most of us think we do think about all three of those pillars, but the thesis I'll present you with here is that in reality we think a lot more about technology, and we're often failing on people to a lesser extent, but process to a big extent. So just a little about me. I'm an SVP of revenue, which is a bit of a weird title. It basically means I'm really important to the company. I oversee sales and account management and customer success in our SDR org. But as important as I am, I'm not quite important enough to get the Chief Revenue Officer title right. That's Chris Hayes. And that's okay. If you ever meet Chris Hayes, you'll understand why. Chris, in a former life, was a President's Club award winner as an individual contributor, so he's a really great salesperson. But he's a sales ops wizard, and the reason he's our CRO is he's better at ops than anyone I've ever seen. And the process that we've been able to put around our go-to-market motion and the engine that we've built was driven a lot by Chris, and that's what led to him being CRO. So we'll talk about some of the things that we've put in place together. Now, for context on Discover.org, I think it's important to understand what our sale is like so you can compare it to your own and see if it's similar enough that what I tell you makes sense for you. So Discover.org acquired ZoomInfo, as many of you know, in last winter. And 2 years ago, our CEO, Henry Schuck, was here presenting, talking about how we had just acquired RainKing, and overnight, the size of our sales team doubled. We went to, as you can see on the screen, about 100 reps at that point in time, and I think we're about 150 million in revenue. After the acquisition of ZoomInfo, we were a 500 employee company there, 500. So today we have about 1,000 employees, and we have about 300 reps. And so our story over the last 3 years has really been one of scale. How do we continue to scale? And it's hard when you double overnight to keep that engine running really, really efficiently and make sure everything is tight. And that's what we've been really laser focused on. Now, in terms of our sale, it's more transactional than it is enterprise. So our median sales cycle is about 40 days in length. Our average deal size is about 30,000. And obviously that informs how we go to market and how we think about how we should go to market. It informs how I weight the value of automation versus how I weight the value of personalization, for example. So bear that in mind as we go through this. If you have an enterprise sale, you probably want to be a little more personalized than we are. If you have more of a high volume sale, I recommend our approach. But either way, I believe there's low-hanging fruit in process, really, really big low-hanging fruit that you can pick up. So we've been thinking about, what are the pillars we need to be focused on when we scale. Like Jeremy presented, we're also a pretty data-driven organization. Obviously, the nature of the product we provide is data, so it gives us great insights into our addressable market and who we want to go after. But internally, we run the business in a very metrics-driven way. We're focused on operational excellence, and when I say that, I mean the process. When we have a process in place, is it working? Are we accountable to it? And then leadership engagement. This is really the people side of the things. Are we in front of our teams reinforcing what we see in the data, the process that we then need to follow based on the data? And does everybody understand in our teams the importance of that? So this is how we kind of look at the world. So before we get into how we do things, let's talk about all of you a little bit. How many of you respond to your leads? Raise your hand if you do. You get back to your inbound leads, right? Everybody does. And Jeremy showed a great tip. I think it said something like 40% of SalesLoft clients respond to their inbound leads within the first 5 minutes. That's really great, and I believe that for SalesLoft clients who by virtue of the fact of having SalesLoft, or any tool like that, are showing they're kind of at the forefront, they're at the upper end of sophistication when it comes to going to market. But most companies are actually not nearly that good. And I know that because we actually tested it. So we went to a different conference recently, and we filled out forms on 30 of the exhibitors' websites. And we filled out the form submitted by Chris Hayes. It was our CROs, his real contact information. And we tracked what happened. How did they follow up with us? And it turns out most of us are really, really bad at getting back to our inbound leads. This is what we saw. Literally half of the companies that we went to and filled out a form from a CRO didn't follow up, not once, with this lead. No call, no email. And that's just like insane, right? We all get how insane that is, but you spend millions of dollars in marketing, and think about all the meetings your sales leaders and your CMOs are having, your CEOs having. Everybody's sitting around in meetings talking about how can we improve the results that we're getting, and they're doing different things, and they're going to events, and they're trying to run campaigns, and meanwhile, their leads aren't even getting followed up on, the ones that they're generating. It gets worse, though, because of the people that did follow up, 9 only sent an email, and only 4 actually called and left a voicemail, and 2 gave us an email and voicemail. So 6 out of 30 actually called us, 20%. 20% called. I think that's pretty bad. The story continues. This is the cadence of the follow-ups that we received from 30 companies. So Monday, we got the majority of the touch points that we got, which was even not that many. There's your 4 calls, handful of emails. Tuesday, we only get 1 email. I think people must be deciding, and they're setting up a cadence or a sequence, that I should have an off day in between my inbound follow-up. I'm not sure why actually we would think that, but that seems to be the pattern. Wednesday, we get a few more touch points, so people skip Tuesday, come back to us. Thursday, get 1 more, and then Friday, we get 1 more call. And hats off to whichever rep actually called us twice. Good for them. So this was the entirety of the outreach that we received after filling out a form. And, that's concerning. If you think about the impact of it, it's about your inbound lead conversion rate, right? So I don't know how many of you know that stat about your companies today, but if you do, think about it, keep it in mind. Maybe you convert 10% of all the leads that come inbound to a completed demo or a sales qualified opportunity or whatever metric you use there. Maybe you convert 20, maybe you convert 30. You could almost certainly do so much better than what you're doing today if you followed up faster and if you followed up a lot more consistently. So this is a study from InsideSales.com who did a study very similar to the one that Jeremy showed us and came to a very similar conclusion. The stats are presented a little differently, but the first is if you don't reach out to that person within the first hour of them inbounding, your odds of converting them decrease 10x. That's 10% chance. And even worse than that, if you look at 5 minutes versus the first 30 minutes, it's a 21x drop in your conversion rate. So here's what I challenge you to do, because a lot of you are probably thinking, like, yeah, Patrick, this makes sense. And I bet most companies are bad at this. Not us, though. We've got this dialed in, or we think about this. I encourage you to test that. I really do. I challenge you to test it. So I think you could do 2 things. One is go to your own websites and fill out a form. Now, you want to create a fake Gmail account and a Google Voice account so that your reps don't know that it's you. And then time how long it takes them to call you, or if they call you at all. And then don't engage and see what follow-up steps, if any, you get in the coming days. And then, shameless plug, I encourage you to fill out a form on Discover.org or ZoomInfo's website. And this is really just a trick to get all of you to inbound to my website. But do that and time us. See how long it takes us to call you back. And I don't care if you engage. You don't have to convert or engage with the rep, but keep track of how we follow up with you after we do that and compare the 2. And if you come up to our booth and tell me that, I don't know, maybe we'll do a drawing. We'll enter you to win an award. I'll tell marketing that as soon as we get off. They'll love me. So here's the thing. Almost certainly you are not calling within 5 minutes. Even Jeremy said, right, it's an automated email, but calling in the first 5 minutes is super powerful. And here's the reality, like the odds are maybe the lowest hanging fruit in your entire go-to-market motion right now, if you get any real volume of inbound leads, is to improve the speed at which you follow up with them and then the frequency and persistency with which you continue to follow up after that lead comes inbound. Because you can increase your conversion rate 10 points, 20 points, you could double it, you could triple it, and what could possibly have a bigger impact on your number this year than doing that? And if you're a rep, by the way, if you're an individual contributor and you want to make more commission and book more meetings, like this is it. Just do this, call them the second they get in. Beat your colleagues to grabbing that lead and you're gonna crush your quota, I guarantee it. Okay, so in a similar vein, inbound matters, getting back to everybody matters, but after that, there's outbound. 50% of our sales is inbound and 50% is actually outbound. And there's kind of a similar story here in that we are very aggressive and persistent in going outbound. I think Jeremy's data is really great. The thing that stuck out to me in that graph he showed, the kind of sloping curve with the touch points and the number of amount of time you should wait between steps, was the frequency, the volume of touch points. It was really high. I think it's probably higher than most of us are doing. At Discover.org, we've looked at our own data, and we know that on average, we book a demo after 3.8 calls and after 6.8 emails. And let's assume there is a normal distribution here. I think it's a common sense assumption, as Jeremy suggested. That would mean that for every demo we book on the first call, which certainly happens plenty of times, there are more demos that we book on 8th call, 9th call, 10th call, or on the 13th email, 14th email, 15th email. So we are really pretty aggressive in how we go outbound, and the reason we are is because it matters. It matters. If we gave up after our third call, if we stopped after a few emails, we would lose 27% of the demos that we book. Now for me, 27% of demos just waterfalls down into 27% of my number. If I got 27% fewer demos, we would have 27% less sales this year. And I couldn't do that, right? We're a $400 million company. That's a really big miss. I wouldn't be at the company much longer if that happened. So I have to know that this never happens at Discover.org. I have to feel really good that we are consistently and always following up on the leads that we're going after. And we do. But we have to track that and we have to hold our people accountable to know that it's happening. Okay. So this is that's the basics, right? If you get to this point, if you're doing those things, you're in the horse race. And our CRO had this analogy for Discover.org that this is a picture of the Kentucky Derby, and getting to the horse race is doing these things. So again, if you took nothing away from today, I would just go test your inbound lead process. But if you're past that, or if you pass that test, you're in the horse race, well then let's look at the difference between great and exceptional, the one that wins the horse. The winning horse in the Kentucky Derby wins by, they talk about it in horse lengths, like a horse, they won by a horse length, they won by 2. But if you convert it to time, it's 0.2 seconds, right? So the margin, the difference between exceptional and good is so small, but it has such a massive impact in the long run. It's the difference between you winning out over your competitor is that 0.2 seconds, right? So how do you get the 0.2 seconds? What are some of the more sort of sophisticated things you can do as kind of the next step? Well, we do a few things. We look at, number one, data, right? And if you're familiar with our products, we provide data on contacts and their phone numbers and their email addresses. We provide data on companies, their revenue, their industry, their employee counts, the technologies that they use. And like most companies, we've used that data to build a lead score model, essentially. We use it to build, and we marry that with kind of their engagement with our content and behavioral scoring. But we're also able to kind of surface some really unique data points that are interesting, and you might not be obvious. Like I think most people think about size and industry as important in their models. One of the really great indicators for us that there's a good target is the prospect's own growth rate. So if I know we track the number of employees year over year at all the companies we're going after, and if I know this company has grown their own employee headcount, they are much more likely to buy from us. They're much more likely to become a customer. to stay as a customer and to continue to grow and spend more with us as a customer. We literally base our entire customer segmentation on this concept. It's the most predictive data point we have. So I have mid-market clients, for example. They're between 100 and 1,000 employees. And we bucket them into mid-market growth clients. Those are the companies, our customers, who are themselves growing. And then we have mid-market renewal, who are more like flat to declining in headcount. And we put more resources against our mid-market growth companies, more headcount against it than we do against our mid-market renewal accounts. So, you can be very data-driven, and you should be trying to surface all these kind of, whatever unique data points would matter in your business to help you better prioritize the accounts you're going after. All of this is really an exercise in prioritization. We have big addressable markets with thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of companies we can go after. And if we want to have the best performance we can, we need to prioritize that universe, and this is how you do that. So be very data-driven from that standpoint. But we're also data-driven in the way that internally we take that data and then route it. So this is kind of the next step. We do all this really persistent work to get demos. We've got a really good demo engine and machine. And then what do we do with those demos once we get them? So they come inbound, or we book a demo outbound. That MQL is routed round robin to a wave 1 inbound SDR. Wave 1 is important, by the way, because if we miss that 5-minute window, actually it's after 3 minutes if the SDR hasn't called, it goes immediately to a new SDR to follow up, because that one isn't handling it quick enough. After we qualify it, and they're going to add in some data points if we don't already have it, what CRM are you using, their title if we didn't capture that, things like that. We place the lead into this model and we score it. And then we route the lead to our account execs, and this is where SDR leadership should like this, because we route the lead to our account execs based on the predicted win rate. And we give our best leads, the highest predicted win rate leads, to our best reps. And we give the worst ones to our worst reps. Pretty draconian, right? But this is kind of like the SDR team's revenge on account executives for not doing well with the leads that they give them. And it's the best thing for the business. Of course I want my best leads to go to my best reps. It's not this isn't communism. This isn't fair for all. It's a little unfair. It's a business. So this is how we go about routing them. This is what that actually looks like. So our leads, have predicted win rates, again, based on this data-driven model. And then if you're an account executive, this is what that looks like and feels like. So this is the account executive scorecard for Carolyn Murray. She's a great rep, one of our best reps at Discover Org. This is her real scorecard. And what you'll see on the left is a chart that plots all of the account executives on a score of 1 to 5. 1 is actually good, 5 is bad. If you're a 1.0, it means you're average or better across all of the metrics that we measure you on. So you only need to be average or better on all the metrics to be in the top quintile. And if you're a 5.0, if you ever got to a 5.0, to be honest, you're probably not a good fit for the role. But if you were a 5.0, you would be getting the worst leads that we get. Now, what Carolyn is measured on is, you can see and maybe it's hard to read, so I'll run through it quickly for you. But Carolyn's measured on her completion rate. So for the demo she got, how many did she actually complete? And she's completing 57.5% of her demos as good fit, qualified. What's her win rate? And here's an interesting tip for the sales leaders in the office. I'm a big believer in not using opportunities as the denominator in your win rate. So most of us, when we look at win rate, we say, okay, you won this many opportunities and you created that many, and numerator over denominator, that's your win rate. The problem with that is we also give our AEs control over when they choose to create an opportunity or not. So a smart AE just doesn't create as many opportunities, their denominator is small, their win rate gets inflated. What we use as the denominator is completed demos, because that's not subjective. That's not up to our account executives. They have to complete the demos for the SDRs to get paid, and believe me, the SDRs are very motivated to make sure the AEs all complete their demos. So there's this check and balance there, and it keeps the data honest. We look at, of course, how much has Carolyn sold in the trailing 3 months, and here's my favorite stat is how much does she sell per demo we give her? I think of the demos I know on average, for every demo I give my AEs, you can see it ranges between like $5,000 and $7,000 per demo complete. So if I give a demo to one rep and they only get $3,000 per demo, and I give it to someone else and they get $8,000, like there's a really big difference there, and that matters. So I'm always, again, this is why we give our best leads and our best demos to our best reps. So you look at this on a trailing 3-month basis, and trailing 3 months turns out works pretty well for us, at least, in that there's variability. So we all know, like, reps, if you've been an AE for a few years, you're going to have ups and downs, and you're going to have slumps and periods where you're really motivated and periods where you're not. When you're not motivated, you're going to slip down the quintiles, and our AEs hate that. And everybody's always striving to get back to the top. So this sort of keeps the AEs engaged as well. The net of all of this, I think, is when we look at our process at Discover.org, we're really trying to, I think it was Mark who had the Rube Goldberg machine, or maybe it was, I don't remember if it was another presenter, but I actually think I've thought of that, but I think of it almost on the flip side as a good thing, right? Like, I'm going to drop this lead in here, and then all of these machinations and things are going to happen along the way. And at each one of those steps, I know that there's an opportunity for me to tighten the screw, to route it around differently, to make it more efficient. I know that from everything from the inbound lead to the way it gets routed, to who it gets routed to how often we're following up, to what we're doing afterwards, all of those things really matter. And we are just constantly looking at all of these things and spend the vast majority of our time at Discover.org and ZoomInfo in sales leadership thinking about that and the operations and process we can put around it. But the key piece to it working is, like, all of us have all purchased the technology that we need to do these things. We all have a CRM. Most of us are going to have a sales automation tool like Outreach or SalesLoft or one of the other players. We've got lead routing tools. We've got lead scoring. What we don't have and what we aren't doing is making sure that the process is honored and that people are held accountable to it. And so I think that is the key piece for you that I would challenge you to walk away with is look at the things that you're trying to do that you've put in place and see, is it being executed in the right way? Are we making this many touch points? Are we getting back to our leads within 5 minutes or at all? And test that first, and I guarantee you'll find some really low-hanging fruit in there that can help you make an impact to this year's number even. So that's it. I'll be at the booth most of the day, and if you want to come by and tell me what your experience was, secret shopping your own team or secret shopping us, or you want to tell me where I was wrong or what you thought I got right, I'd love to talk. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if this works. All right, whatever, I can yell. All right, thank you, Patrick. That's awesome. I think I've already gotten about 15 retweets from your company as I was sending ideas and pictures during that. So